love to have you introduce yourself, Maria, and then we can go from there. So who are you and what do you do?
Okay, so my name is Maria Lopez Duena. I am an ad executive. I actually have had 35 years in the advertising business. And I work at an agency called Ninth Wonder, where we focus on consumers that hide in plain sight, like me, the bilingual, bicultural, and yet we're very influential. So I work in advertising with a variety of clients, and I have always been in the advertising field. I spent 20 years doing what we call general market advertising, which is for everybody, and the last 15 really focused on the bilingual, bicultural. The school crossing has been around for 15 years in my head. This is her quinceañera, and it's Hispanic Heritage Month. So I just decided finally it's time to release her to the world. It features a character called Mariví. Her real name is Maria Victoria de la Paz, but Mariví is her nickname. And it follows her on her first day of school. And she's a third grader remembering what her first day of school was like. And it speaks to all of the cultural differences between the American way of life and the Latino way of life. So she is a child of immigrants from Latin America. And she lives in a very Latino, Hispanic, Latinx household at home, where she speaks Spanish to her parents and English to her siblings. And then she goes to an American school where she speaks English, but more importantly, she's taught the English culture or the American culture. And we never talk about that. It's very easy to talk about ESL, English as a second language, but we don't teach America or the US as a second culture. And they're really different because Latinos are all about collectivism. That's our ethos. It's all about family and community over self. And yet we go to school and we're taught the American way of life and the Protestant work ethic, which is all about being self-reliant and independent, not interdependent. And that's where most of the battles are fought when kids are growing up. So, it just talks through the experience that she had that first day and how difficult it was for her. It starts with her having her name replaced by a more Americanized version of her name, which is what a lot of us go through in this country, and just how her day evolves and how she brings her experience as a child into the lessons that are being asked of her in the classroom. And it really dives deep into her insecurity and her fear of standing out and of being noticed because she feels so different and so much like an outsider. So it's just an authentic, a very authentic reflection of what life is for many bilingual, bicultural children.
Right, and I can definitely testify to that. And I know you are Cuban American, correct?
Yeah, so my parents were Cuban immigrants. My dad was originally from Sevilla, Andalusia. So he was Spanish, and my mother Cuban, and he was living in Cuba at the time. So they immigrated from Cuba.
So you are a child of immigrants. Does this have anything to do with your book? What was the motivation and inspiration for your book? And does it have anything to do with your personal experiences?
Yeah, so it has everything to do with my personal experiences. The book was my way of dealing with a lot of the stuff that we all deal with as children, and the fact that I never saw myself in the literature growing up. And I thought, what a loss, because I studied psychology, and I think it was an attempt to just better understand all of these conflicting ethoi, if you will, and the differences in languages, et cetera. But the book is because I didn't have that book when I was a child. And yet we're as children of immigrants, many times we're asked to be the Sherpa for our foreign-born relatives. We guide them through the American ethos and the American way of life, and demystify products and services, inform brand purchases at a very young age. There's a lot of adult things that we have to do as children, and yet there's no one there to guide us. So Mariví was really created to be that Sherpa, so those kids could see themselves in literature, A, and feel validated, and secondly, so that they could have someone that they could relate to and identify with, they wouldn't be alone. So just feel like, okay, there's someone else going through this, not just me.
So as a bicultural and bilingual kid, what are some of the challenges that Mariví goes through in the book?
Oh, well, she goes through her not recognizing who she is at the very beginning because her name gets changed. She has experiences where she knows the answer to questions that are happening in class and that are being asked by the teacher, but she can't bring herself to even raise her hand because she's feeling so insecure and overwhelmed by anxiety, because she feels so out of sorts because everything is so different. Her mom gives her a cross to wear at school, and she notices that no one else has it, so she hides it. She the teacher gives her an assignment that says, do a self-portrait, tells the whole class to do a self-portrait, and Mari V's portrait is the only one in the whole class that isn't just about herself, it's about her family, because she doesn't see herself as an individual. She's still very tied to her family. Again, that collective culture, it's very hard to break from that. And so, you know, her lunch is different. She feels like an outsider at lunch. Even that's different. You know, her mom has given her black beans and rice when everyone in class has this, you know, the typical sandwich with the potato chips and the dessert. So everything is different, and it's so much more than language. And she gets so caught up in her day that her day ends with an accident, if you will, where you know, she relieves herself and urinates in this cloakroom in her first grade room class, and she just it just the perfect end to a horrible day. And her mom doesn't understand the word accidente, and thinks it's a physical accident or a car accident. So there's hysteria when the mom shows up at school. And so it's just bringing up back and forth and back and forth in a nuanced way, and then in a very direct way at times, how impactful and how important it is to understand not just language, but cultural differences when we're engaging with individuals that their parents or that they themselves were born in another country and have come to the US at an early age, because, you know, we all need validation at the end of the day.
Right. And this is very interesting to me as someone whose name is Maria Antonieta Chavez Alfonso.
Yes.
Yeah, I know living in the US can be complicated and going to school in the US, even though I didn't come when I was young. I came when I was 16. It was still very complicated, right? So, can you elaborate a little bit on Mari V's relationship to her name and her nickname?
Yeah, so her name is very Latino, you know, Maria Victoria, and she gets her nickname at home, and it's Mari V. And I purposely picked that name for a reason. So I called her Mari V because the Mari obviously stands for Maria, which is such a Latino name, and V is really a nickname for Victoria, because ultimately she is victorious in amalgamating these two worlds that she lives in. And so that hybridity and that duality, there's peace down the road, but it's very difficult at the beginning. So Mariví is her nickname, and it's amalgamation really of her two cultures and her two worlds, Maria and Victoria.
And like you said, she does kind of live in two worlds. I think a lot of us have felt this way. How is Mariví both an insider and an outsider?
Oh, yeah. So she's both, and she's asked to navigate a world that she's native to because she was born here, but it's not native to her family. So she's really an outsider across the board. She's an outsider at home because she feels different, and she's an outsider at school because she feels different. Where she's an insider is the only time she feels like an insider is with her relationship with her siblings, because that's the only group, if you will, that are living her experience. And that's where I think it's important. The book is important not just for, you know, the bilingual, bicultural kids, but especially those that don't have siblings that they can relate to and be insiders with. And then the insiders, they're a lot of fun. You know, this is one of multiple books that I've written. It's going to be a chapter series, kind of longitudinal, so it follows her as she matures. And there's a lot to be said, from, you know, the first sleepover to when she gets her period. I mean, all of those things have different cultural meanings to Latino culture and are treated differently than to the American culture. So she's really only an insider with other bilingual biculturals.
Knowing that it's going to be a chapter series, what's next? What's the next book that's going to come out? And is it going to be for the same age group, or is this going to be progressing as it goes?
Yeah, I mean, down the road, it's going to progress as it goes. I want to have a couple of books for each of the grade levels, if you will, or for the same exact group. And I want then people, students or readers, to be able to follow her as she matures, because I think the value is for readers across the board, whether they're bilingual, bicultural, or monolingual and monocultural, to just understand that the life experience of these individuals is challenging at times, like all childhoods, but it's also filled with experiences that are unique to their livelihood, because it's unique to their ethos and the ethos of the Latino community. And it's, I think it's just important to follow that, because it doesn't all just happen in one age. I mean, that's the other thing. We go through a process as we mature as immigrant children. Acculturation is a process. It's not a do-all and an end-all. And typically you don't reach assimilation where you become American, meaning that your ethos is Americano, until fourth generation or beyond, depending on where you were raised. So because acculturation is such a longitudinal process and it requires multiple generations to become American, I wanted this to be more than just one point in time, but multiple points in a trajectory to help kids along the way, because different kids can then be introduced to Mariví at different age groups based on what their needs are, which will be different at different age groups.
That's really, really powerful how that process is going to be reflected on the chapter series. And now I think my last question would be, where can we get the book?
Thank you. At Amazon.com. Where else? You can get it there, or you can get it on the website, wearemariv.com. There's a click there to buy as well that leads you back to Amazon. But yeah, thank you for asking.
Do you have anything else for us to know about the book?
Just that it really has been born out of my heart and my own life experiences and those of others that I've spoken to throughout the years. It's a work of fiction, but like all work, it's informed by your life experience, and it's made with a lot of love. It was created with love, and I think I think our country and the world needs books that are created from a good place with a lot of thoughtfulness, and with the goal to heal and to help. And I think I'll leave it at that.
We do need more books like this. And thanks so much for joining us for this interview at Be Latina.
Thank you, Wanda. I appreciate it.